President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has asked the National Assembly members to speedily consider and approve the 2024 budget of 27.5 trillion in 30 days. Addressing a joint session of the National Assembly on the 2024 budget proposal on Wednesday in Abuja, President Tinubu said the speedy passage of the fiscal estimates was to sustain the January to December budget calendar started by the last administration. The budget has an aggregate expenditure of 27.5 trillion naira, of which the non-debt recurrent expenditure is 9.92 trillion naira, while debt service is projected to be 8.25 trillion naira, and capital expenditure is 8.7 trillion naira. Take a look at experts from his address earlier today at the joint session of the Senate and House of Representatives.
Tax budget of renewed hope, President Tinubu said the estimate is predicated on a crude oil benchmark price of $77.96 per barrel, daily oil production of 1.76 million barrels per day, and an exchange rate of 750 naira to a dollar for the year 2024 fiscal year. According to the president, the 27.50 trillion budget proposed expenditure reflects the serious challenges faced by Nigeria and contains key reforms necessary to address them. Giving a breakdown of the budget, the president said 9.92 trillion naira is for non-debt recurrent expenditure, 8.25 trillion naira for debt servicing. Capital expenditure stands at 8.7 trillion naira, while the budget deficit is projected at 9.18 trillion naira. The president said the 2024 budget deficit will be financed by mainly new borrowings.
We have adopted a conservative oil price benchmark of $77.96 per barrel and daily oil production estimate of 1.78 million barrels per day. We have also adopted a naira to US dollar exchange rate of 750 per US dollar for 2024.
Tinubu said the 2024 budget of renewed hope was designed to address critical issues and to grow the country's economy and end its security challenges during the next fiscal year.
The 2024 appropriation has been themed Budget of Renewed Hope. The proposed budget seeks to achieve job-rich economic growth, macroeconomic stability, a better investment environment, enhanced human capital development, as well as poverty reduction and greater access to social security.
President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, in his remarks, commended the development plans of President Tinubu's administration for the country, saying Nigeria has never had such audacious plans since the days of the nation's founding fathers.
We need to acknowledge the specific achievements of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration so far. Those who doubted him initially forgot his track record as the governor of Lagos State from 1999 to the year 2007. And Lagos, of course, is the Nigeria's melting pot. Nigerians strongly believe that with the debt profile of the day today, that we are a demand for the job to fix our economy.
In view of this and the related challenge of high level of public debt, the National Assembly will ensure that the 2024 budget includes concrete strategies for sustainable debt management, including measures to increase revenue and control expenditure.
The budget, which is expected to be approved and take effect in January 2024, is Nigeria's highest ever and prioritizing fiscal sustainability, economic growth, and security. Rashidat Yusuf for Trust TV News.
Viewers, tonight on the program, we are joined by strategist and policy analyst Baba Yusuf as we delve into the conversation proper. He's a man of many caps, having served as the Managing Director of Export Processing Zone of NACO, and he's currently the CEO of Global Investment and Trade Company. It's always a delight to have you, Baba.
Thank you for having me yet again, Hamza.
Yes,
good to be here.
Yes, it's budget time, dinner time of sorts. That's what some people see budget. But is it really dinner time for Nigerians? Let's start on a lighter note.
No, it's not. All the indices have not been looking good. They've only been getting worse since the beginning of this administration. Of course, inherited liabilities, and then the global and national socio-economic headwinds. So for us, it may not be dinner time, but maybe we are getting the ingredients together to prepare the dinner. The budget is what we are going to see. Will it actually get us the ingredients back from the market for us to have a proper dinner for all Nigerians, not for some few Nigerians?
And when we were young, maybe coming up, whenever it is about budget, you see the country standing still of sorts.
Absolutely.
But people are saying it's now a ritual. Is that correct?
Yes, because I'm also of the opinion that our budgets are more transactional. I call them transactional budgets. You sit down, you hear the numbers. Of course, they are standard numbers to read out, but I wanted to hear some nuggets to hold the numbers, to assure us that these numbers are not normal numbers, incremental year on year. Capital expenditure, recurrent expenditure, cost of borrowing and all that. So basically one will say it is transactional because it's all about money going in here and there. Of course, Mr. President tried to speak to some of the critical deliverables, if you like, to contextualize the budget. But then because of the apathy, now that goes to what you are talking about. Nigerians have now, we are in the mood of so much apathy for governance and for good governance and all that. People will say, oh yeah, there you go again. And to be honest, today, a large section of the citizens of this country didn't bother to watch the budget.
They are disconnected.
They are disconnected. One, because they are already tired. You are aware, all of us are aware, in the last 2 to 3 months, it's all about the jamboree in the executive and the legislature, buying this, buying that, procuring this, borrowing this. And then less than 3 weeks ago, there was a supplementary budget also. So many numbers were reeled out, and then now we have budget. So for Nigeria, it's like, okay, here we go again. So nobody just wants to listen until and unless government demonstrates that living up to that commitment to deliver. People will actually not bother because they feel, oh, they are sharing money. That is the notion I had when I was asking some people. I went somewhere, I saw that, I said, are you not going to listen? They say, oh God, they are sharing money. Now, if that is the sentiment of a large section of your society, then you need to take a step back and say, what are we doing and where are we headed?
Yes, and beyond the numbers, you see the politicians to greater extent actualizing some of the provisions they made to themselves. But you rarely see something out there for the masses.
Yeah.
Is it that we don't have law that makes budget sacrosanct? I know in other countries, if you promise, you must deliver. You see budget 100% implemented. But here, very dismal.
The problem is the negative collaboration. I call it negative. It's a collaboration, but it's negative between the various arms of government that are supposed to provide the checks and balances. In other climes, like you mentioned, you see in other climes where the legislature is holding the executive to account, bumper to bumper. And therefore, the executive is trying so much to ensure that they deliver what they promise. You also see the opposition parties in those countries doing their job, not playing bread and butter politics or playing to the gallery or pull me down game, but to ensure they keep the government in power in check and on their toes to deliver. If you look at the UK, style of governance, they even have shadow ministers. They are ministers, but they are shadowing the substantive ministers to ensure they deliver. And these checks and balance mechanisms are, to be honest, lacking, even though they are present within the framework of our governance, but they are not actually playing the role, effectively. And therefore, it is just transactional and laissez-faire in terms of style of leadership. And that is where why we don't see budget performance. And you are talking about budget performance.
Yes. Now, I want to go back to, the earlier part of the president's speech, and I will quote. He said that an aggregate revenue of 11.045 trillion naira was projected to fund the 2023 budget. That was last year's budget of 24.82 trillion naira, with a deficit of about 6.1% of GDP. As of September, the federal government's actual aggregate revenue inflow was 8.65 trillion naira, approximately 96% of the targeted 8.28 trillion naira. Despite the challenges, we continue to meet our obligations. Have they really met the obligations they promised in the 2023 budget?
First of all, this is not President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration budget. He inherited this budget from the previous administration of President Muhammad Buhari. But to suffice it to say, one can also say it's a continuum because it's the same APC government that handed over to an APC, government. Whether or not they deliver, I think that is politics. The president, I don't expect him to say he didn't deliver. But then the citizens of Nigeria are the ones to perform that evaluation and say it has delivered.
And you are representing them here.
Absolutely. And everybody will tell you that absolutely they have not delivered. I wanted to land on that because a key member of his cabinet, went the other way in that statement last week or so to say Nigeria is bankrupt. The former administration has done this and that is the National Security Advisor. So you see this paradoxical conversation. While the NSA and other members, the President, Minister of Finance, the Coordinating Minister of the Economy mentioned something to that effect of how things have gone bad, in the last administration. So if that is the case and they inherited, like Mr. President said, the asset and the liabilities, in a manner of speaking, one would say the President wouldn't have said they have delivered, because indeed they have not.
But will they deliver this time around?
Good question. Now, Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has his budget. He has presented it and made a tall order. He wants this budget passed within 30 days. I guess this is one of the times we'll see the National Assembly really earning their money, because most of the time you see them, they sit around and then they go for research. So that being said, when this budget is passed, Mr. President will own this budget and his team to deliver. And he has made some very clear statements with regards to the deliverables if given this budget. Now, he has also said he's going to run a performance-driven government administration. He has read the Riot Act to the Federal Executive Council, which is expected to cascade down the chain of command, meaning the input of the Federal Executive Council will be the output of Mr. President. In terms of budget also, the budgets are domiciled in the various ministries. So we expect this, ripple effect performance to impact on Mr. President. While he's appraising them, Nigerians are appraising him. I'm very sure he's very conscious of that. But like the saying goes, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. We would like to evaluate that by end of Q1 because he has made some very, solid statements with regards to policy, with regards to deliverables, in terms of security, in terms of education, in terms of poverty alleviation. Okay? These are very key. So we want to see how that will start panning out by end of Q1 2024, and then we'll know if Mr. President is really serious.
I struggle to see whether I will lay my hand on the specifics of the budget, because that is where you see the mind-boggling provisions. Yeah. Maybe the food for the presidency, what they will spend on the aircraft, the presidency, and all that. Maybe the presidential clinic. But we don't have that. But he has, budgeted a lot of money for this year, right? Is it 27.5 trillion?
Yeah.
Budget. But my fear is, they said non-debt current expenditure 9.92 trillion, debt servicing 8.25 trillion. It sets me off guard. because the difference between what they are going to use for servicing of debts and then what they are going to use for recurrent expenditure. We're not talking about, we will go to capital. Are you satisfied with this balancing? Almost a lot of money, going for debt servicing.
Well, I don't think there is an anomaly, Hamza. Remember that so far we are using almost 90% of our income to service debt anyway. And this debt is still there. The provisos for the repayment of the debts are there. So we will continue to be taking a chunk of our money to pay these debts going forward. What is important, like I've said in many fora, is while we are reeling down these numbers, I want to see the disposition of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration with regards to fiscal discipline. It is there's a loud silence with regards to that. You hear a lot of fiscal discipline. You hear a lot of mantra about fiscal policy, and all that. But the second critical leg of fiscal discipline is either not so loud or not even there. And what do I mean? Fiscal discipline speaks to also the budget performance. It speaks to the cost of governance, structure of governance. Is it when you talk about procurement malpractices, when you talk about budget padding and all those things? You talked about elements of the budget. You want to see the detailing of the budget, and that is where issues of those paddings and all those things will come up. Now, that fiscal discipline should be on the front burner, will be something that Mr. President will look at. And like something I coined recently, I say, Mr. President needs to move away from the boldness of assertions and start inculcating the practicality of discipline and the political will of execution. Those two legs speak to fiscal discipline. That is when a president can say, I'm cutting my structure of governance by X%. And I want to see it done now. And you see the ripple effect on your socio-economic framework. And you want to say, going forward, this is the way procurement is going to go. I hear some conversations about the review of our Procurement Act. Fantastic. We want to see it done immediately and quickly because a lot of money goes in there with regards to procurement. So you see a lot of leakages. Now, fiscal discipline deals with leakages. I hear conversations around the crude expectations and the inflows. But so long as you keep on looking at the inflows and you are not looking at the leakages, you are not going anywhere. We need to deal with wastages. We have to have cost efficiencies. We have to deal with leakages. And then we have to deal with our fiscal discipline overall. That is the only way you will not be having this nightmare of looking at the recurrent expenditure and the cost of borrowing, hiking continuously. And the excuse is, you know what, we are going to make more money. I have never seen a country that have gone forward or a business that has gone forward by looking at only the headlines of revenue and income without dealing with the cost efficiencies, blocking leakages, dealing with corruption, dealing with insecurity, and you say you go forward. It's not going to happen.
When you compare what they plan to do with the supplementary budget passed few weeks ago and what we have now,
yes,
will you say that they learn any lesson from the bashings of Nigerians, even though we don't have the specifics? I'm still making reference to the non-debt current recurrent expenditure of 9.92 trillion. Did they learn any lesson?
The truth is, we are still at a stage of political evolution in Nigeria where the political class only open their ears when they are campaigning and they want to pretend they are listening to the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerians. The moment they go into office, they block the ears and try to pretend they are not looking at anybody.
So maybe they didn't even hear the outcome.
So as far as they are concerned, they have moved on. Now, this supplementary budget, if you hear the speech of Mr. President, even speaks to the fact that the budget is ongoing and it has delivered the expectations. While we have not even started, we have not expected it to have even kicked in. Because this is a budget that was passed how many weeks ago? Of course, some of them are going to deal with issues that have been dealt with already, but one would expect that there is a transition of the supplementary budget to be a bridge of a gap before the 2024 budget kicks in, where issues of environment and all that would take care of some of these issues that have become matters arising, especially with regards to security or dealing with insecurity as the case may be. That being said, like I said, it is not, I don't see it as a policy of our people, but about we are here, we have done it, we are doing it again. Like I said, mantra. What remains to be seen is that dealing with that fiscal discipline in action. Only when that is done are we going to see the results. We can discuss also about how we are going to fund some of this critical infrastructure project, because definitely the borrowing will not take care of it. And Mr. President was very clear about it. I commend him for talking about, the creativity of using the PPP, to leverage doing that. But then there's a whole lot of conversation about how that will not just be feasible, but viable and sustainable.
Now, capital expenditure. I know that in Buhari's last budget, it was really ambitious. The one before it, equally ambitious. And they said they borrowed a lot of money in order to fund infrastructure. Are there any infrastructure for us to validate their assertions? I'm not making reference to the previous administration.
Well, the statement of the National Security Advisor, the current Ribadu. Minister, yes, Nuhu Ribadu, the statement of the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy has almost practically indicted the previous administration. So there is no gainsaying that it was water into the basket as far as we are concerned with regards to infrastructure. Infrastructure speaks directly to tangible values, Hamza. It's not talking about just intangible values. The first impact of infrastructural development is tangible values, roads, critical infrastructures, roads, power, and all that. We have not seen anything. Everybody knows what went with that. We still have issues of graft around those infrastructure projects. Now, coming to, in fact, it is so bad, I wanted to mention it. I was reading the other day.
Go ahead.
This Ajakucha Steel, which is an infrastructure, and that would speak to how the PPP Mr. President is talking about has to be frameworked. It turns out we do PPPs, people come with foreign direct investment. At the end of the day, there's capital flight out in favor of the foreigners, not in favor of Nigeria. Not up to 1 month ago, this billionaire concessionaire called Mr. Lakshmi Mita, who is the main person that was given concession, the Ajakuta, steel project to, that project now has cost us, Nigerians have to now pay out $500 million, which is about close to 1.something% of our foreign reserve. And what will that money do as legal repercussions based on the PPP we have with that project? And the money, his brother, Mr. Lakshmi's brother, Primod, or what is his name, is going to benefit that to settle a contract dispute he has elsewhere in another country from our own asset. So when we are going to deal with this critical national asset and infrastructure project, part of my conversation about do and don'ts will have to speak to these legal frameworks, because we're always left short. Now, that's speaking to the infrastructure. But then one will argue to say, what? Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Mr. President, is going to face front, and I expect him to face front more than other. The date of lamentation, we have entered what I call the chapter of lamentation in the history of Nigeria from 2014. We've been blaming Jonathan's administration for 8 years. That is what President Buhari did. Now it turns out, interestingly, an APC administration has handed over to another APC administration, and we are having another episode of season 2 or season 4 of lamentations.
Even though it appears that Buhari and people around him don't want to start joining issues. Maybe they
cannot join issues because they know what it is. But I will expect this administration to be more front-facing, more forward-thinking, to deliver what was promised. And I'm happy because Mr. President has told us clearly we should not pity him. He took the responsibility. He has inherited the capital and the liabilities, and is going to deal with it. So with regards to infrastructure, we hope that things will be done totally different from what has been happening.
There was approval of loans for the president, just yesterday by the National Assembly.
Yeah.
And here we are allocating 9.92 trillion to continue servicing debts. Is this not really a recycling trap for the whole country?
Debt is part of life. There's a proverb in Hausa language that says debt is the intestine. It's like an intestine. It's in the stomach of everybody. So I don't want to overflow the issue of debt because almost every country is indebted. Debt is not the issue. But how do you manage what you collect the debt for?
Have we been managing ours?
Definitely poorly. And then going forward, like I said, we go back to the issue of this fiscal discipline. You have to borrow. Definitely to manage, your projects, your infrastructure is fine. But how are you able to do things in such a way and manner that you don't continue escalating the cost of your borrowing? You don't continue escalating, your income. You don't continue harming your income. Harming in the sense that before the money comes, you have actually spent it. This is where we are today. We are doing projections, but basically the projections are in the negative, because at the end of the day, they are using it to service debt. So what do we do to curtail? Is not looking at those incomes alone.
And a key government official,
what comes in and how it is retained.
Maybe you heard of it. A key government official at a certain forum said, already whatever comes in is not actually for Nigeria. All our proceeds from the crude, they are using it to service. They have already, people have already paid for the crude we are, producing now. So how is this government going to, of course, fund some of these ambitious provisions? That will they get the loan?
First of all, they will get, because there are different methodologies of securing the loan. It's not going to be an issue. Secondly, Mr. President, like I said, mentioned the strategic partnership arrangements for these critical infrastructures, for example. So this is another way to be able to deliver. So you borrow and you go into partnership to either a PPP, whatever, to be able to deliver. And of course, you have to also make more money. So diversification of the economy, whether it is agri, solid minerals. We see Mr. President going all around the world trying to bring in investors to invest in different sectors. What remains to be seen is those investments are going to be in what critical area. The production economy needs to be catalyzed, Hamza, in terms of power, for example, in terms of agri-value chain. All those critical infrastructure that need to trigger the critical value chains have to be activated. But then again, there's the argument that, which is true, how do you go about enabling infrastructure in an area that is totally insecure? Last week, I was speaking to some people in Zaria here, not far, and people can go and verify. It's not somewhere in the border of Nigeria and Niger, who are having to settle terrorists, Hamza, for them to harvest their produce. So you have people that are in Nigeria, within Nigeria, almost in the middle of Nigeria, that are paying two types of tax. Zamfara, Niger, Borno, Yobe, Katsina, and all that. They are paying two types of tax. One tax to Nigerian government. Actually four. They pay to the federal government, they pay to state government, they pay to local government, and then they pay to these terrorists. And that is the only way they can survive. And one of the critical pipelines for increasing income is to ensure we expand the tax net, which I don't have a problem with.
And this tax is most likely before they even go to the farm, they have to pay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So everything is netted off before even the produce comes out of the farm. And that is why I'm using this opportunity to urge Mr. President. I know that, and there's a presidential committee dealing with this. I totally agree. There's a lot of people that are not captured within our tax database. Very important. It needs to be done. We have about 80% of our economy that is driven by informal sector. But then we also have what we call the big businesses. The big businesses also are in cahoots with some unscrupulous elements and shortchanging us and not properly paying taxes. And everybody knows that is an open secret. So while we are dealing with this, I hope that solution will be multidimensional. We have people that on the front face are telling us they are saving the economy, but on the back office are not effectively paying taxes that they should, while people that are paying taxes to terrorists are equally paying taxes somehow, somewhere, to the government. So we have to look at those, revenue reining in, fine, tax, in terms of tax collection, in terms of economic diversification, then in terms of our PPP dispositions. But importantly, We must block our leakages. We must stop being wasteful. We must have fiscal discipline, and we must fight corruption. That is the only way this economy can turn around and even head in the right direction.
I am concerned about the feasibility or rather possibility of actualizing some of these investments via PPP. Do you think this traveling by the president, by the vice president, by ministers and all that, they are worth it? Junketing out of the country, if you look at it from the beginning of this administration to this time, personally I have lost count at the number of times the president has gone out of the country with the claim of bringing in investors. Will they ever come if what you said earlier in respect to security is anything to go by?
You see, we have different types of investors, Hamza. I commend Mr. President for all the globetrotting with the view to bring in investors, but I want to also see some focal point attention on our internal domestic critical issues. Like I mentioned, insecurity. By now, I want to hear some quick wins apart from the optics. You know, I saw the ministers of defense in regalia and all that. Those optics should be put aside. We need to see quick wins happening already. We know that the security strategy is mostly going to have medium to long impact, but there are also quick wins that can be achieved. The supplementary budget has also have a very large chunk of it allocated to defense and security. That being said, the issue of PPP, there are some 5 factors that I believe, if not considered. By the way, the investors will come.
They will come.
They will come because they have security. Yeah, we have different categories. And that is why I talked about the legal frameworks, because as we speak, we have foreign direct investors, we have foreign investors in Zamfara and all that, stealing our mineral resources. They are investors, but they are illegal investors. Mr. President is trying to bring the legal ones. But even for those ones, they will do their due diligence. And sometimes when they come and they are going to take risk, the risk appetite or the risk threshold will determine the kind of provisos in the agreement of the PPP, Hamza. Because they cannot just come to a risk-prone area and the provisos will be such that the benefits will be so much on our side, because they have to also cater for those risks in the framework of the legal frameworks. And that is why I believe I'm a proponent of 5-factor considerations for the PPP.
Okay, I will please you hold your breath so that we'll go on break, so that by the time we come, we now mention those 5 factors. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Viewers, we'll be back shortly. Don't go away.
That's great.
Welcome back. If you are just joining, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. Do well to follow the conversation across our social platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and watch us live on YouTube. Still having the studio, Baba Yusuf, strategist and policy analyst, former managing director, NACON Export Processing Zone, and now CEO of Global Investment and Trade Company. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Foreign direct investment.
Yes.
To help actualize Nigeria's ambitious budget. You say there are about 5 or 4 deliverables?
I posit that
maybe
there
quickly
are.
To have them.
I posit that there are 5 factors that should be considered. I am not saying they are not there, but I think we should have more attention should be focused on them, so that we learn from the past experiences. One of which is the recent declaration or assertion by the Minister of Aviation and
Festus
Keyamo, SAN.
Aerospace Development.
Aerospace Development, which is just a confirmation of what most of us were raising red flags during the past dispensation with regards to the concession of the airport, with regards to the Air Nigeria. And what am I saying? In considering this, either foreign direct investments or the PPP, public-private sector participation model, the model is very critical, Hamza. Because if you hear the snippets of the outcomes of what we already know with regards to Air Nigeria, from the modeling, the issue started. How the Ethiopian airline is taking a chunk of everything. Model is very important for those people that are in decision, whatever ministry, whatever sector it is. We have to be thorough in identifying and deciding what model we are adopting. Either a model of transaction or a model of the entire framework of that particular project. And in doing so, we need to be engaging all the critical stakeholders to ensure that we have thought it through over and beyond parochial interest. The second one is very key, the integrity and the transparency of the process. We hope we will not see opaqueness with regards to all these transactions and all these things that will take place that have to do with the Commonwealth of Nigeria. I expect the wealth of experience of Mr. President in consulting, in accounting and finance to come into play, in midwifing or in championing these whole transactions. He is an egghead when it comes to consulting, when it comes to PPPs. But we want to see it happening in a way and manner that impacts, significantly at the national level over and beyond subnational levels. The third factor, which is very key, I mentioned, how somebody is leveraging our critical national asset to pay out a liability of $500 million due to our own docility. The legal framework is very critical. And I will expect the involvement of subject matter expert, Hamza, all through to use the comb and whatever it is to ensure that all the provisos there are in safeguarding the interest, in all the interest of Nigeria. And of course, what I call the outcome should be a win-win for the investors and for Nigeria, not the other way around. The third one is the execution quotient of this project so that we don't continue to have white elephants. Look at this roundabout. There's a roundabout in the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja, around Area 1. It has been there for many, many years, almost 10 years. We have this project because of our execution quotient, lack of high level of execution quotient, due to the way the procurement itself was frameworked in the first place, due to corruption and all that. So we want to see execution quotient that will deliver within the timelines in terms of value for money, in terms of quality for the people, in such a way and manner that a $10 million project will not end up being done at the cost of $50 million 5 years after the fact, after the initial timeline is set. So execution quotient is very key. And of course, robust stakeholder engagement, a transparent dashboard to show people what is going on with that project. If it has to do with an FDI, foreign direct investment, if it has to do with critical infrastructure and all whatnot, Nigerians need to understand what is going on. If the sincerity of purpose is there, Nigerians will continue to support their leaders because we want to see development, we want to see progress. Hamza, it can only happen when we continue to engage, internally and also externally. The world is a global village. We don't have the capacities inherent. We don't have the capabilities. We have to get them. But in getting them, we have to do them right so that we get the benefit, and the benefit will not just be ending to a very small fraction of our society.
Okay. 3.2 trillion for security, 2.2 trillion for education, 1.3 trillion for health, and then 1.2 trillion for infrastructure. The balancing, is it okay?
Well, you see,
security, I know for more than a decade now, is taking a large chunk of our budget.
The problem we have now is not just the numbers. I'm not even looking at the numbers anymore. I'm looking at execution, Hamza, like you said. For many years, a lot of money has been thrown into that. Some people are coming up with the defense that if you look at the amount and you rate it with the dollars, is that the reason why we are not getting the impact? Is that the reason why we are not getting the transparency and accountability? To measure performance, to say, yes, at least we've done this much, not the measurement of self-appraisal. When performance is good, the citizens will rate you. When performance is good, the infrastructure will speak to you, Hamza. When the performance is good, the international community will speak about it. But it turns out, internally, we keep on self-appraising. So the numbers are there, we have seen them. Like I said, Mr. President, this is his budget, he's going to own it. I hope and pray that we are not going to have the same transactional execution of the budget, because the budget is not supposed to have just a transactional execution. It's a multifaceted, budget. It has to deal with strategic, it has to deal with operational, it has to deal with transactional. So we want to see that those multidimensional impacts. And importantly, I'm very keen, patiently waiting to see the outcome of the performance management system Mr. President has put in place. And by the way, I understand from the briefing this afternoon by the Honorable Minister of Budget, they want to make citizens' engagement more robust than it used to be. So they have opened platforms for citizens to, go in there and monitor the performance of government in terms of what it promises vis-a-vis the budget, which is a welcome development. But then we must say that it has been happening before. What I hope and pray that also citizens will not just sit back, but will really go and engage those platforms, so that at the end of the day, the government will also feel that people are really paying attention. And by this, I'm talking about, the so-called elites, the armchair critics should go and critique, should go and be engaging those platforms like the iMonitor they talked about, and the website of the Ministry of Budget and Planning, and of course, all the ministries, to ensure that we continue to monitor. Very interesting what is happening, Hamza. I'm very happy about it. In the last 1 week or 2 weeks, we see how we are opening the vista, monitoring the budget of Lagos State, monitoring the budget of other states to say, this is for food, this is for water. This is good for democracy. And I like the feedbacks getting from the governors to take, quickly take a step back and say, oh, it's a clerical error. Whether it is a clerical error or whatever, it means that people are watching, people are aware, and people are countering. That should be of scale at the national level. The president is not omnipotent, in fairness to him. We also need to engage, to support all the players to ensure they deliver. And our role as citizens and all the other institutions is to keep on talking, keep on monitoring, and keep on escalating the issues.
I know you do help MDS and other subnationals in looking at their preferences, yes, while putting together budgets.
Absolutely.
Is there any improvement in the way and manner agencies of government, rush? Because you see the errors by the time, from tomorrow, we will start seeing them. Yes. What is wrong? Where are they not getting it right?
First of all, it has to do with the money levels. Hamza, is unfortunate. We have round pegs in square holes. It is a societal rot in the entire civil service. We have a lot of these issues. And then secondly, the timing issue. We are a very reactive society. As a whole, it's a cultural issue. We wait until the dying minute, we rush and start doing things. And that definitely will be prone to mistakes. And then oversights as well, because you finish the budget, you realize that you have forgotten a very critical element that should be in the budget. It is very embarrassing that at this stage of our polity, of our evolution, of our growth, we come at that level, at the highest level of governance, whether it is legislature, executive, judiciary, and you hear issues about clerical error in the glare of the public, sometimes on matters that have been signed off and sealed, even in law, clerical error. I urge us to change that disposition. It has to do with the culture, the corporate culture of a society. That's the issue. Otherwise, somebody that is sitting somewhere that is doing these things repeatedly wrongly should not be there. And then somebody that collects a document also should have the time to review. You go as simple, allow me to say this, as simple as public speeches. You see public office holders, they didn't even dignify Nigerians to actually do what you call the first read of what you are going to tell Nigerians. And then you see a very high-ranking public officer coming to speak to Nigerians and completely offline, even with the paper in his or her hands. It shows the level of seriousness and respect people have for the country. In case of budget, it's the same thing. People rush it, And I think that now call goes to the legislature. The robust engagement of legislature within the realm of the provision of the Constitution is very important. Because if that is happening, no people will cringe in their seat to take budgets that are frail with errors
and
inconsistencies and sometimes outright fallacies, numbers that don't gel, and go as a head of any MDA and present to a legislature. Or for a minister that is bestriding a ministry with some parastatals, for that to cascade and to be sent, because their input are his output, and he takes those envelopes and he presents, only then are we going to realize, sometimes even when the budget is passed. I remember during President Buhari's time, you remember, he had to send back the budget to the legislature. This is outrightly unacceptable, but then this is where we have found ourselves. It's a corporate cultural issue. We hope that all involved will change this particular narrative or situation. But I think importantly, the president's dispositions to these things will go a great deal in changing the dimensions.
And going by the issues in the Niger Delta, is it not a wishful thinking? 1.76 million barrel per day, and then going by the prevailing situation also at the global market, 77 per barrel.
Well, when I saw those numbers, in fairness to Mr. President, I think credit goes to them in better than the previous administration with regards to conservative.
In arriving at this.
Yes, with regard to being conservative. If you look at the benchmark of the crude, $77, right? And you do your projection, you will say, well, they didn't overreach too far. Mr. President and his team didn't overreach too far. They've stayed in a very, what I call a bit of a safe zone, rather than the audacious thinking of going to hold on to 100 or beyond $100 that we have seen in the past. In the case of the naira to dollar,
yes,
well, that sounds good.
That
sounds good, Hamza, but that remains to be seen, because naira, is free falling, despite all the efforts.
I don't even know how much it is in the parallel market.
Exactly. So what I will say is, some policies take a bit of time to kick in. I don't know how that will work, because a lot of things are happening at a very odd time. What is the odd time from a strategic perspective? We are at the last quarter of a year. Everywhere in the world, the rates are high. Inflation, whatever, because of the ins and outs. So I don't see how naira will strengthen against the dollar inching into December. I don't see that happening. However, the policies of the new CBN governor and his team and the entire economic team of Mr. President, when it will kick in remains to be seen. I expect that for this $750 to be maintained, there's a lot of work that Mr. President and his team has to be done. So it's a bit audacious there. Then when you look at another thing that was very absent in the assumptions, I don't know if they have factored truthfully and sincerely the inflation rates, as it is over 24% and rising. It is likely to even hit 30% if care is not taken with our economic dispositions. If that is not taken care of, that inflation will swallow whatever gains we are thinking we are going to do.
Projected that it will come down.
The projection of coming down, as far as I'm concerned,
it's a wishful.
Will be subject to fiscal discipline.
Okay, finally, because we have run out of time, and you should say this in less than a minute. Mm-hmm. What should the poor expect? They can't afford to have 3 meals per day now. All these figures doesn't bother them. What should Tinubu and his team do to actually bring back majority of Nigerians on page?
Thank you very much for the second leg of the question, because the first leg, I don't know how to answer it. What should Nigerians expect? But Mr. President has called this budget the budget of renewed hope. I hope in spirit, in letters, and in action, Mr. President, being conscious of the situation of Nigerians, will ensure that this budget which he will own will actually really deliver that hope. But beyond hope, to actually deliver the expectations to Nigerians, to the rising number of multidimensionally poor Nigerians. When you talk about expectations of Nigerians now, Nigerians are confused, Nigerians are fast losing hope by the day. And that's the fact.
I hope they hear us well. Thank you very much, Baba Yusuf, strategist and policy analyst, former MD, NARCO Export Processing Zone, and CEO Global Investment and Trade Company, for coming to the program and for your informed perspective on the 2024 budget as presented by President Tinubu today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
That's a wrap on today's package. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. Join us tomorrow for another interesting edition. Bye-bye for now. I'm Hamza Idris.